And so I just wanted us as leaders to be open in this season to having our hearts affected by the presence of God in this revival season that we're in, because I sense that this revival season will demand something from us as leaders that maybe we haven't had to give before. But I was reading an article by Stan Grant, who's a reporter he's a freelance reporter now, but does a lot of work for the ABC. And he wrote an article for the ABC about the federal budget that's just been released. And he said that about the freshly minted federal budget, that he made this claim, and he said that the federal budget, or any budget, and he was referring to our federal budgets over the years, he said is a moral document. And the article went on to try and demonstrate that the decisions made to write the budget are decisions about morality, right or wrong, and are we doing the right thing by people, etc., etc. And so I agree with that, but I kind of also don't agree that the choices that would have been made to write that document, the federal budget, that what those decisions were decided because of like a moral virtue, like good or bad. I think it actually runs a lot deeper than that. I think the writing of something like a budget reflects something much deeper than just good or bad choices being made on the paper. And so what we know is that a document like the Australian federal budget, or even your personal family budget, or your calendar, if we want to talk about preparing for the future, or the choices you make about the company you keep, the relationships, friendships, family, that all flows downstream from the vision you have for your life. Now, I would hope, as part of Beyond Church, that you would have some kind of idea of where you want to go. We talk about that a lot, about casting personal vision for your own life, your life for your family. Where are you going? So I would hope that you would have that. And so, the decisions that you make about all those things in life flow downstream from vision. But vision actually flows downstream from values, doesn't it? So vision actually flows downstream from values. But values actually flow downstream from belief, what you believe about yourself and others in the world. And those core beliefs, the things that everything else flows from, have everything to do with your heart, the condition of your heart. And I would say that your beliefs are actually forged or created in the fire of your heart, and they're not created up here. So the decisions that you finally make in your head actually come from something that's going on very, very deep within the fires, within the passions of your own heart. And so when we look at what we're preparing for paying a price, when we look at setting a budget, getting ready for the future, when we look at our personal household budget, or we look at the national budget, it reveals what's at the very core of the author's belief system, what is in their heart. So does that make some kind of sense? And so therefore, the only way to kind of ensure that a document like the federal budget or our family budget, or any plan that we might have for our lives or our homes, the only hope that we have for that to reflect the kingdom of heaven is for us to have a heart for the kingdom of heaven, a heart that's following after Jesus, where Jesus is the king of our heart, because the king of heaven with the values of heaven needs to be represented in our heart, so that everything that we do, our beliefs, our values, our vision, flow from a relationship with the king. And here's what I want to say about that there's no other place on earth that deals solely with the condition of the human heart. There's no other place on earth. It's only the church that cuts through all the noise of the systems, of the processes, of procedures, of ideologies, of the financial decisions, the budget. It's the only place that deals solely with the condition of the human heart, and calls us to call to account what matters most. And the question that needs to be asked when we're asking about what matters most for you and me and our heart is, where are we with Jesus? Like, where is our heart with Jesus? Is Jesus the king of our heart? Because if Jesus is not the king of our heart, then his kingdom will never be exercised in our world. And so that's where I want to talk about the church. The church is the only place where we address that solely. We don't we don't bring anything else into the conversation. The church isn't a political platform. The church isn't trying to outwork a social agenda. The church doesn't need to have a bias in one way or the other, because the church deals with one thing and one thing alone. And it's the place where heaven touches earth. It's a place where you deal with what's going on in your heart in the context of community. And in that place, nothing matters more than your relationship with Jesus. And so I just wanted us as leaders to be open in this season to having our hearts affected by the presence of God in this revival season that we're in, because I sense that this revival season will demand something from us as leaders that maybe we haven't had to give before. If we're going to talk about paying a price, counting the cost, moving forward into what God's got for us, stepping into the vision we have for our church and our lives and what we're leading, holding true to our values, knowing what we believe, then we have to be ready to address what's going on in here in our heart. And because some things may begin to change as revival continues to be outworked across the lives of our church. And so I just want us to be ready to be okay with our heart being changed, because new seasons expose new conditions. That's kind of just logic, right? A new season, new conditions. It's getting colder. I don't know about you. I've got a heater going on in this little room in here. It's actually getting pretty hot. Hang on, let me just turn it off. So new seasons expose new conditions, and we've got to be willing to change to meet the needs of a new season. And God's doing something new in our world, and that means we have to get ready for our heart to change. And we might have to budget for that, get ready for that, because it's going to cost us something. You have to pay a price for something. And so what's it going to look like? What's the budget look like? What are we going to have to get ready to be paying a price for in this season as things change and things move forward and things grow? And we have to become the leaders that God's called us to be to embrace this new season. Well, it will be a big yes to things like uncertainty. So hopefully you're budgeting for that. That's going to be important. Not being exactly sure what's coming next. You're going to have to budget for change, budget for growth, budget for things to be in tension, so things not being resolved, loose ends. So if you don't like loose ends, well, you need to deal with your heart and get used to it. Be okay with things not being resolved. Brokenness, things breaking and maybe not being fixed as soon as you'd like them to be. It's a big yes to selflessness, big yes to sacrifice, and even a big yes to things like suffering. That's what we might need to budget for in this next season. And if our heart isn't willing to say yes to that, then I'm here to challenge you to ready yourself, ready your heart to embrace those costs that are coming our way. And it's also a few big no's. When you write a budget, you say yes to things, which also inevitably means you say no to things. And in this season, as we move forward with what God's got for our church and what we're leading in our lives, it's a big no to things like our ego, a big no to things like our own personal agenda. It's a big no to things like security, even stability. Now, I know that's challenging, but I want to be where God wants us to be as a church, and I want to be ready for it. I don't want to walk blindly into this next season, not ready to pay the price and budget for the future. So, that's all about our character. That's really what I'm talking about, because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so our growth in character, let me read this quote to you as I wrap up. It's from a book that I've referenced before, and I started reading it again just this week. And it's just, again, speaking to me in a fresh way. And I'd really encourage you, even if you've read it before, to maybe get a hold of it and read it again. It's by Dan Allender, and it's called Leading with a Limp. And I just, it's not a big book, but it's full of just profound truth about the way that Jesus led, and really how that works for us in our context and how we can lead like that as well. So he says this. He says, now, growth in character occurs to the degree that we accept being forgiven as a greater gift than life itself. If the greatest gift is not what I see, but how I am seen by the living God, then my gratitude knows no limits. So in other words, it's not about the things that I see. It's not about productivity. It's not about what I gain, what I get. If the greatest gift is not what I see, but how I am seen by the living God, then my gratitude knows no limits. And he's saying it can grow immeasurably as I suffer the loss of illusions, the death of dreams, the shattering of success. He says, suffering grafts our heart to grace. Suffering grafts our heart to grace. And I love that idea that if we accept that our forgiveness is the greatest gift, even greater than life itself, then we're forgiven no matter what, which means no matter what happens to us, we can be grateful, which means that when suffering comes our way, it shouldn't discourage us, but it should show us that we're being drawn into a deeper heart connection with Jesus, which is what it's all about. So that's from Dan Allender, Leading with a Limp. And so I don't say that to scare you, but I say it to prepare you, because I want us to write an emotional, spiritual budget for the future, because we get to participate in the greatest work that anyone will ever do in their life, which is to put their hand to the plow to build the local church with Jesus. We get to lead a community of faith toward the things of God. We get to not only align our heart with his purpose, but we get to point other people in that direction and see their lives align with the divine favor that only comes through relationship with Jesus. And so through this season of revival, which is what I'm seeing and what many other churches are seeing, it will come at a great cost, but it can never outweigh the greatest gift at all, which is the grace of Jesus and his forgiveness that we've received, and knowing that God sees us and has something great for us. And so, yes, the national budget might be, Stan Grant might think it's a moral document. Maybe he's right. What I think is, though, that all decisions should come from what's going on in here, and Jesus should at all times be the king of our heart. And in this season, I kind of sense that Jesus is going to be wanting to deal with stuff in our heart so that we can be ready to embrace some significant growth and challenges and opportunities. And we're already starting to see that across the life of our church, which is super encouraging.